Mrs. Murphy said here yesterday that thought she would commence on Milt and eat him. I don't that she has done so yet, it is distressing. Wow, just imagine reading those words. They were scribbled into a diary way back in late February 1847 by Patrick Breen. He was trapped with his family high up in the snow-choked passes of the Sierra Nevada. It's a raw, completely chilling glimpse into an absolute nightmare. Today, we're going to explore exactly what happens when human ambition collides with the unforgiving extremes of our planet.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a pretty dark thematic journey. We're looking at some of the absolute most harrowing survival stories in exploration history. We're going to take the data, the diaries, and the forensic evidence left behind by real historical expeditions and use them to really immerse ourselves in the terrifying limits of human endurance. It's a story of hope that rapidly descends into sheer desperation. Because, you see, almost every tragedy begins with a spark of hubris and just boundless optimism. Back in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the map of the world literally still had blank spaces, and explorers were practically lining up to fill them. Think of the intense ambition of guys like Lieutenant Colonel Percy Fawcett in 1925, who ventured into the dense, fever-ridden jungles of the Mato Grosso in Brazil looking for a lost civilization he just called the Lost City of Z. Or the 128 men of the Franklin expedition in 1845, sailing these grand ships out of England, 100% confident they would tame the icy Northwest Passage with the absolute best technology of their day.
Part 1. The Call of the Unknown. This quote right here beautifully captures that exact early optimism. It's from Tamsin Donner, written in a letter to a friend back in June 1846. Her wagon train had been delayed a bit by some rain and a rising river, but overall, she was in great spirits. She was a 44-year-old mother, traveling with her husband George, their kids, and this really well-equipped party on the Oregon Trail. The tragic irony dripping from these words is just palpable when you know the absolute horror that lay ahead for her family's wagon train.
Part 2. Betrayed by the Elements.
The thing is, that early optimism rarely lasts. Eventually, these ambitious groups slam right into the terrifying reality of unyielding environments, where just one piece of bad information can completely seal your fate. Let's look at exactly how bad information doomed the Donner Party. Notice the sheer scale of the deception in Hastings' promised route. This guy claimed his cutoff would save them 350 miles and be a totally smooth trip. The kicker? He actually hadn't even traveled it with wagons before. The reality was an absolute nightmare. It added 125 to 150 miles to their journey. Instead of a smooth path, they were forced into steep, boulder-choked canyons where they literally had to hack a road through the trees by hand and then faced a deadly march across the Great Salt Lake Desert. That single delay cost them everything, pushing their arrival in the Sierra Nevada right into the teeth of a brutal early winter.
And then, on the completely opposite end of the extreme weather spectrum, we have this suffocating number, 116 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 47 degrees Celsius. That massive temperature was recorded on January 19, 1861, inside a canvas tent during the Burke and Wills expedition into the heart of the Australian desert. The young German wagon driver William Bray, who was recording this data, was stranded at a depot camp at Cooper Creek while his leaders pushed north. Just imagine trying to survive, let alone maintain strict meteorological hourly observations in that kind of sweltering, inescapable heat. It's almost unimaginable.
Part 3. The Collapse of Order.
As the elements batter these expeditions, the isolation and weather just begin to strip away logic. Equipment gets lost, groups fracture, and leadership starts to fail under the crushing weight of impossible circumstances. You can trace this collapse perfectly through the harrowing timeline of British Royal Navy officer Robert Falcon Scott's Terra Nova expedition. They marched all the way across the Antarctic plateau, only to arrive at the South Pole on January 17, 1912, and find out that the Norwegian explorer Amundsen had actually beaten them there by less than 5 weeks. The psychological blow was devastating, but the return journey, that was physically lethal. Day by freezing day, they just unraveled. By March 5th, Lawrence Oates' frostbitten feet were swelling tremendously. By March 17th, he was nearing the very end. And on March 29th, Scott made his final diary entry. They died pinned down in a tent, frozen just 12.5 miles from their next supply depot. So close, yet so far.
Behind every expedition failure are actual human beings forced to make impossible decisions. Take William Breha, for example. He was just 25 years old, an excellent wagon driver working for a modest salary, who never in a million years expected to be made an officer. Yet, during the Burke and Wills expedition, he was left in charge of the Cooper Creek Depot. His instructions were super vague, basically just wait for 3 or 4 months. The isolation,
that oppressive 116-degree heat, and his dwindling supplies weighed incredibly heavily on him. When he finally left his post on the very day his leaders unknowingly returned, he faced stiff, lifelong criticism. But looking at him, you just see a young guy who did everything he possibly could under literally extraordinary pressure. And this right here is the lonely, eerie monument to that agonizing weight. It's the famous dig tree at Cooper Creek. Bray headed out in this desolate environment for 4 long months, meticulously recording the weather every single hour, from sunup till sundown. After waiting 5 days beyond his 4-month limit, he carved the famous dig instruction into this very tree, bearing what supplies he could before finally retreating to save the lives of the men he still had left. It's such a haunting visual of pure isolation.
Part 4: Starvation and Impossible Choices. When isolation drags on and the food finally runs out, the human body actually begins to consume itself, forcing explorers into choices that defy human comprehension. This incredibly ominous quote comes from Lawrence Oates during Scott's Antarctic expedition. Oates was the guy in charge of the ponies. As the weather deteriorated and the animals weakened, Oates gave Captain Scott some very stark, logical advice: kill the unacclimatized ponies for food and advance their supply depot, while Scott refused. Oates' warning, "I'm afraid you'll come to regret not taking my advice," just hung over the expedition as they slowly starved out there on the ice, paying the ultimate price for failing to adapt to the brutal reality of their situation.
Meanwhile, back in the snowbound cabins of the Donner Party at Truckee Lake, conditions were equally horrific. The snow was so impossibly deep that people literally couldn't leave their cramped, filthy cabins for days at a time. They ran out of normal food incredibly quickly. Diets were reduced to oxhide, which they had to boil into this disagreeable glue-like jelly. They repeatedly boiled ox and horse bones to make soup until the bones were so brittle they would just crumble to dust when chewed. In one cabin, children even picked apart the oxhide rug lying in front of the fireplace, roasted it, and ate it. It is a visceral, deeply unsettling reminder of what true starvation pushes a human being to do.
62.5%. That was the staggering mortality rate of children under 6 years old in the Donner Party. You see, during starvation and overexposure, biology really dictates who lives and who dies. The survivors were generally younger, but notably, not infants. Men actually died at much higher rates than women. Why? Because women naturally metabolize protein slower and store more body fat, which delayed their physical degradation. Ultimately, survival came down to cold, hard factors: your age, your sex, and the size of the family group you traveled with.
Part 5: Frozen in Time.
Eventually, the howling winds fade, the diaries go silent, and the snow settles, leaving behind these macabre and deeply unsettling mysteries that end up haunting us for decades. Take the famous Dyatlov Pass incident in the Soviet Union back in 1959. 9 highly experienced hikers were found dead on the slopes of a mountain. And the facts of the recovery? They are terrifying. 6 perished from hypothermia, which makes sense, but 3 had suffered severe, totally unexplained physical trauma, including crushed chests and a cracked skull. Adding to the horror, some bodies found in a creek had completely inexplicable soft tissue damage, missing eyes, missing eyebrows, and a missing tongue. The official, bone-chilling conclusion from the Soviet investigation was simply that they were compelled by an unknown natural force.
Sometimes, though, modern science unveils truths the explorers desperately tried to take to their icy graves. When anthropologists led by Owen Beatty finally exhumed the graves of the lost Franklin expedition 133 years later on King William Island, they uncovered a very grim reality. Forensic analysis proved that the crew suffered from severe lead poisoning, most likely from their early tin cans or the ship's water systems. This would have caused totally devastating neurological and physical decline. Even more disturbing, they found cut marks on the human bones, definitively corroborating early Inuit accounts that the desperate, dying crewmen of the Royal Navy had ultimately resorted to cannibalism.
It's so easy for us to sit back in the comfort of our modern world and judge the decisions made by these explorers. We look back and see the hubris, the stubbornness, the epic failure of leadership. But we aren't standing in 116-degree desert heat. We aren't freezing to death in a tent just 12 miles from food. We're trapped in a filthy, snowed-in cabin watching our own children starve. So I want to leave you with a lingering thought today. When ambition meets the brutal, unforgiving limits of nature, what would you do to survive?